The African Five, the Cape buffalo, leopard, rhino, elephant, and lion, all vulnerable species and all in dire need of protection and conservation. As a step in the right direction, the attempts to conserve the great African lion began with reintroducing the species into many national parks throughout South Africa. The African lion, the second largest living cat, currently exists in sub-Saharan Africa and India. The lion is classified as a vulnerable species by the International Union for Conservation in Nature due to its rapid population decline of 30 to 50% per 20 years for the second half of the 20th century. Managers on reserves throughout South Africa have begun the attempts to preserve the lion species. For the past decade, the overall population characteristics of lions within the Finda Reserve have been monitored. Although there is an overall increase in the lion population, this does not show the many hardships managers face with the reintroduction of lions and the economic impacts that follow. The main concerns with the reintroductions of lions in South Africa is the effects on ecological regulation, genetic degradation, and catastrophic events. Within the Finda Reserve, the Lion Management Forum was created in order to recognize and solve these challenges. Being proactive in attempts towards conservation is the Finda Reserve manager's main concern. To be proactive conservationists, reserve managers attempt to mimic the natural processes within reserves. Giving lions the ability to freely roam around the reserve while being monitored without disturbance is the best way to ensure that the lions are successful in rehabilitating themselves. Ecological sustainability within reserves is not an easy request, but the attempts towards this has been shown within the Finda Reserve and many other reserves across South Africa. Another key concern with the reintroduction of lions into South Africa is the effects that the lion populations will have on other species. Lions are considered one of the apex predators in South Africa, and other species are not acquired to defending themselves against such a successful predator that has been so quaint in the environment for the last decade. Reintroducing the lion could lead to dramatic decreases of other important species. The Cape buffalo is one of the lion's most hunted prey, and as the buffalo is also considered an endangered species, it is concerning for scientists that predation rates from lions will further disturb the Cape buffalo. However, research performed by Craig Tambling and colleagues showed that after the initial introduction of lions, the Cape buffalo was able to manifest predator-specific behavior to combat against predation. The Cape buffalo responded to the reintroduction of lions by remaining in large herds and protecting their young. Results from the experiments by Tambling and colleagues showed that buffalo populations returned to normal after lions were reintroduced into the population. The predator-prey interaction between the lion and the buffalo is overall beneficial to both species. The research conducted by Tambling and colleagues took place in the Addo Elephant National Park, South Africa. The results of the study indicate that the reintroduction of lions does not have an everlasting impact on Cape buffalo, but there has still been controversy on whether or not the lion impacts other species throughout other reserves. Many other species are assumed to be greatly affected by the reintroduction of lions. Among these are the ungulates, defined as any member of a diverse clade of primarily large mammals, including cattle, giraffes, deers, and many others. Amongst all the research done after the reintroduction of lions, the effects on ungulates was a large factor. Research performed by Remington Mall and colleagues examined the strategies employed by ungulates to avoid predation from lions, including migration to lower carnivore-dense areas, aggregating in larger groups as a means of vigilance, dilution, and defense, and many other strategies. However, these behaviors have both positive and negative impacts on ungulates and lions. Some of the problems that ungulates faced was a decrease in foraging efficiency due to their large aggregating populations. Furthermore, although large aggregations overall allowed for protection against lions, the larger groups of ungulates were more easily detected by predators, and so it is unsure if this type of behavior is beneficial to the ungulate. Overall, the study performed by Mall and his colleagues demonstrated that although the reintroduction of a carnivorous species such as lions would have an effect on ungulate species, the degree of this effect is uncertain. It is demonstrated that in this study and many others, however, the presence of lions does overall influence the behavior of their prey species. Finally, with the reintroduction of lions in South Africa, the concern for conservation is a large subject. The amount of energy it took to be able to preserve the lion species was large, and the fear of reintroducing lions into the wild and risking the chance of them becoming an endangered species again is a major concern for conservationists. As a step towards conserving the lion, Ross Barnett and colleagues performed genetic analysis to determine how populations of lions were related to one another. The hopes for this experiment was to determine how closely related lions were and then relocate them into unrelated populations in order to increase genetic diversity. In concluding their study, Barnett and colleagues confirmed within Africa there are different geographical populations of lions, which include North African Asian, Southern African, and Middle African lions. In order to manage lion conservation, more research such as this is needed to track dispersal patterns of lions to ensure their long-term safety and overall successful lives. With the decline in apex predators throughout ecosystems, many different conservation techniques are being used to conserve the lion. One of these, as explored by Haley Clements and colleagues, was to influence managers of private land conservation areas to reintroduce the lion into their managed areas, benefiting the lion populations while also attracting tourists to the conservation areas. The main concerns for the conservation of lions within reserves includes ecological regulation, genetic degradation, and increased susceptibility to catastrophic events. As described in the study performed by S. Miller and colleagues, reintroducing lions is a lengthy process, and it is useful to follow the guidelines established by the Lion Management Forum, reserve managers, and scientists. In conclusion, the conservation of lions in South Africa is not an easy task to accomplish. However, many people are still making attempts in preserving the life of the lion. There are many opportunities for individuals to get involved in conservation efforts, in not only the conservation of lions, but in the conservation of any animal that are endangered or at risk of extinction. Having the resources and capability to preserve such an important apex predator within the African environment and throughout the world is a great accomplishment for scientists and researchers alike. Getting involved and being knowledgeable about endangered species is a step in the right direction.